So, as we've been reporting in the news, the last voter registration weekend is now a thing of the past, and the 1st of November has officially been gazetted as the date for the local government elections. This was announced this morning by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, and effectively means that the voters' roll will be sealed at midnight, and political parties have until tomorrow to submit their candidate lists to the Electoral Commission. According to the IEC, over 600,000 people registered to vote this past weekend, while 39,000 actually used the online registration system. COGTA Minister Dr. Dlamini-Zuma joins us now. What a pleasure to have you, Minister. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
So that's it. We go to the polls, 1st of November. It's now been gazetted, no turning back.
Yes.
Yeah.
The courts we had to gazette immediately after the registration weekend. We've done that. So it's all systems go.
Fantastic. Let's talk about your observation, your overall observation of the voter registration process this past weekend. How do you feel it all went?
Well, I went to a number of stations. I think the new voters came a bit more than the old ones. But remember, now people can check themselves online, and you can register yourself online. So it's difficult to know by just observing people who come physically to the stations. Yeah. Yes.
And it is important. I mean, if for people to, and the great thing was the online registration that was allowed to happen, which I think is a great addition, and also for people to check exactly where they are registered, because there's always that confusion. You arrive at the voting station, your name isn't there, but it probably is just a little bit down the road. So these things are very important, and the responsibility of South Africans to check out their registration status.
Yes, it's very important, because sometimes the voting station boundaries just shift a little, and then sometimes people leave it until late to say, I'll go just before they close. And then you get there, you find your name is not there, it's at another voting station, and you might just be too late for that. So it's important to know exactly where you are going to be voting.
Yeah, no, agreeing. What exactly, and perhaps people need to know this, what exactly does it mean once the election date has been gazetted?
Once the election date has been gazetted, it means that the voters' roll has to be sealed. So you can't, at midnight today, the voters' roll will be sealed. So you can still register online, but you are registering for the next election once the voters' roll has been sealed. But it also means that all the processes towards voting kick in. Of course, the timetable had already started, so the IEC will now publish the final timetable with whatever amendments the courts allowed them to do. So the voters' roll is sealed, the timetable towards election is then published. And then everything now is just about, and the political parties will also start their campaigning. And it will just be all campaigning season now. Yeah, very much so. Let me just get a proper clarification from you. So the voters' roll closes at midnight tonight. So if anybody registers online today, will that still be acceptable? I think probably it will be, because if the voters' roll is not sealed, then it means they can still come in. But what I'm sure of is if you come in after midnight, will still be registered, but not for this election. It will be, you'll go into the voters' roll for the next election, not for this one. Yeah, and that's a very important point to note. So if people are, because I have seen quite a few people still saying, okay, but I'm fine, I can register today. So as far as you know, online registration you can do,
But come midnight, that's it. You will only be registering for next year's for the general election when that registration goes through after midnight. So it's an important point to note. So you say the next step in the process now, obviously, is the voters' roll is closing. Electioneering is in full steam ahead. This much we do know, and we can see it with our own eyes, and we're covering it every step of the way. But the other thing is the registration now. And this has been a real, stroke of luck in your favour, the ANC, because it hasn't been a smooth process for the candidate list, has it? So are you confident you're going to get this sorted out now by tomorrow?
You're now putting an ANC cap on me. Okay.
I have to. I'm sorry.
Well, yes. The Deputy Secretary General has been working fearlessly and fiercely to try and get this right. So I hope it will happen.
Yeah, I hope so too, for your sake, because, this is where we get going. But I'll make you take that cap off and keep the COGTA Minister cap on. And one of the other important things, and in fact, we're asking this as our question of the day today, and that is about, some of the events that we saw unfolding between the EFF and the ANC yesterday, and, all about the campaigning and a bit of fighting that took place. And this was, these are not the kind of things we want to see in the run-up to these elections. So my question to you is, are you confident that the country can have free and fair elections in this current climate?
Well, I think it should be possible, but every political party, every individual should take responsibility for that, because campaigning should happen. There should be no one who's not allowed to campaign anywhere, but it should be done for instance, where I was going for registration, there were places where there was IFP, there was EFF, there was the ANC, their tables were there, but there was no problem. They understand that it's a contest. They want voters, they want people to register, but there is no need to fight. But we all have to take responsibility for that. It can't be the IEC's problem. It can't only be the political party's problem. Every individual, members of political parties must understand that. Yeah. If you see an FF, if you are ANC, you greet, you ask, how are you, and everything, and you get on with your business. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. We've got such a terrible connection with you, Minister. We're getting the gist of what you're saying, but I just hope we don't lose you. It's just coming in and out. But I'm going to keep it on because we are getting the gist of what you're saying. But it's just unfortunate the connection's not great. As a follow-up,
yes, it's raining and thundering here.
We can hear that, but we are still hearing you, which is the good thing. Just a follow-on to this. What we saw yesterday unfolding again. I bring this up between the EFF and the ANC, and we're seeing that we're running this morning that Julius Malema is lodging a complaint with the IEC. But this is happening in a very, very volatile area, and that's KwaZulu-Natal. It's the ANC blocking the EFF. So, this is unacceptable. Surely people should be free to electioneer wherever they want to without intimidation.
That's very true. Everyone should be free, and the ANC really should be the last to block people because we have experienced that and we didn't like it when it happened. So I think we should just really, ANC members should understand that we should allow people to campaign freely. You should be allowed to campaign freely. And then the voters will decide. Mm-hmm. There isn't a need to fight. I'll say this and say it again. There is no need.
Yeah. Minister, one of the great concerns is, and I think that this is a concern for a lot of people, homeless people's rights. So The whole idea about municipal elections and us going and registering and being in the ward where we live and where our houses are, and, you know, that we make sure that we can, of course, have these elections and go and cast our vote. What about homeless people? What are their rights? When do they have a say in all of this? They don't even have a home to register, and where does that leave them?
Well, I haven't discussed this with the IEC, but my view would be that they should register around where they stay, because even though they don't have a home, they sleep somewhere. They stay around a neighborhood. So that would be my take. But as I say, I've not discussed it with the IEC, because even in the rural areas, we don't have specific addresses. You have a home, but there is no street address. So you have to say near school or whatever. And I think it's important that they also, if they so wish, exercise their right and be allowed to do so.
Yeah, it would be an interesting conversation with the IEC, because, you know, the reality is that there are many, many homeless people in South Africa who are South African citizens and have the right to vote. And like you say, if they perhaps, you know, are staying somewhere, but the reality is if they go to a voting station, they haven't registered, their address isn't there, chances are they're not going to be able to vote. I think this is a glaring issue within the electoral system, perhaps that needs to urgently be addressed with the IEC.
Well, maybe if I wear another cap, we should have thought about it. Maybe we should have been registering them online, and discussing with the IEC how to manage that. So I think we all have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Minister, I'm not going to harp on too much with you because I am concerned about this connection. But one thing I do need to get, however, is a response from you and your expectations from the Constitutional Court today. It is a very big ruling that the ANC no doubt want to go in the favour of the IEC for opening up the registration of the candidates list, because this could be again a big damage to the ANC in your electioneering and voting. So what are you hoping to come out of this? Obviously, I know what your hopes are, but just give us your expectations for the Constitutional Court ruling.
Well, it's difficult, but as I was the respondent, I can tell you what my response was in the court papers. My response was that the IEC gets its mandate to draw the timetable or to amend the timetable from the Municipal Electoral Act. The Municipal Electoral Act does give the IEC that mandate for a number of reasons. One, when the election is called, they do the timetable, but they can amend it according to the law if the date changes, or for whatever reason, if they think that will assist in a free and fair election. So it is in the law that they can do that. So that was what my argument in the court papers was. And the fact that if somebody is allowed to vote, they should be allowed to stand for election. They should be allowed to be voted for. So since the registration was open, it seems to me that the registration of candidates should also be open, because you can't say you have a right to vote, but you don't have a right to be voted for. Yeah. You have a right to vote only. So that was my argument. So whatever the court decides, but to me that was something that the IEC had a mandate to do according to the law. That was not set aside by the court.
Yeah. So we wait for that one. That ruling is coming out. It is coming out this morning. So we'll get further clarification on that and we'll know exactly the way forward. Minister, before I let you go, just numbers that we're getting through and we're seeing from the IEC are basically saying that, close to, or if not over, 600,000 new registrations, 30,000 plus online that have registered. One of the biggest worry in this country is the youth not going out and voting, not going out and actively voting and having their say. Is this a concern for you? I mean, do you feel that perhaps maybe the youth, their voice just feels ignored and they feel, well, I just don't want to bother voting? What are your expectations for the youth's participation in these municipal elections?
Well, I'm hoping for a much greater youth participation because I think voting is their right and they must exercise it. But equally, it is their responsibility as well. Because if you don't vote, say for argument, nobody pitches up to vote, what happens to our democracy? So it's both a right and a responsibility. But I think we should also encourage young people. If you look at some of the councillors, they are young people. So obviously, councillor candidates, let me put it that way, and some of the councillors that are a responsibility for electing who should run their wards and who should run their municipality. But they shouldn't really feel that their voice is ignored. It's ignored if they don't vote, because then it won't be there. But if they vote, their voice will count, and it will determine who gets in and who doesn't.
All right. Minister, I am going to leave it there. We've managed to get a lot out of you with that signal, so I'm not going to play around with it. I think we've done well. Thank you for your time. Minister, COGTA Minister, talking to us, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, talking about the voter registration weekend. Of course, you're seeing, and we've heard it, that if you still want to register online, chances are you are able to register up until midnight, because that is the deadline for the voters' roll to close. That's midnight, as in this evening, 11:59. You will be able to register, but anything after that, this will not allow you in to vote. So that's a big thing you need to know, that if you do vote after midnight, that is only going to be for the next elections, which will be the national elections, and they're not taking place this year at all, anytime soon. So just make sure that if you haven't registered, do it now.